it's not.
Hello, welcome back.
Hi.
Episode 51. Today,
Yeah, it's
another
rolling along.
Yeah, today another slimmer setup here
Yeah.
with Keith, Tyler, and myself, Lisa. So just three. We were a little bit stuffed in here.
Back
last
to the
week.
normal.
Back to the
Back
normal.
to normal. More airtime for you anyway, Lisa. So that's what you wanted anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's the first day without Jeremy on the team, so we might now look out for those mean and evil comments.
I'm
So
sure
we
you
have
still
to-
got a few barbs in there.
Right, we have to observe that a little bit more closer now.
We can't bash on them too hard.
Yeah.
I thought for our intro, to ease in today's topics, I thought we switch things up a little bit, and bring a little new idea, fun facts / whatever. So I thought I'd present you with 3 facts around the number 51.
Ooh, this sounds exciting.
Yep. And you have to tell me, and I hope you didn't cheat and look it up
I did not.
beforehand.
Did you, Tyler?
Tyler smiles.
I barely looked at you.
Okay. Oh, that's not right. Anyways, I tell you 3 fun facts around the number 51, and you tell me what the lie is. Like 2 are true and 1 is wrong. You tell
Oh,
me.
nice.
How about that? Let's try this. So, possibility A, Messier 51, also known as the Whirlpool Galaxy, is about 31 million light years away from Earth.
Ooh.
That's the first fact. Second fact, Area 51 was officially confirmed by the US government in 1951, so its existence. Or C, the 51st Super Bowl featured the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history.
Well, the Super
lie?
Bowl one was Tom Brady versus Atlanta.
But
But
at 51,
that's what I don't know. What Super Bowl did we just have this year? 54?
You are the sports guys.
Yes,
I'm a little
come
bit
on
disappointed now.
I don't know what the numbers are. It's 50, more than that, I think.
Is it?
56, maybe. I don't. So we're supposed to guess which one the lie is?
Yes, you have to.
I'm
one
going-
is 2 are true and 1 is wrong. You have to tell me what the lie is.
I'm saying C, the sports one's got to be true, just because.
The sports one is true.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
what is the other true then? We need 2 truths and 1.
I mean, the galaxy thing, is it going to be like 32 million light years
Yeah,
away?
you
I
better
feel
not
like
be
that's
just- yeah.
too specific,
tell
so that's
me.
probably got to be true.
So you're saying that one's true?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll go with Area 51 as the false one. I bet you it's like Area something else, and it's not 1951.
So you agree on B being true, being wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are true, guys. I
Wow,
did not
nice.
expect that. No, Area 51, which is called Area 51,
Mhm.
it was not officially confirmed in 1951.
Oh, so these are kind
So,
of
yeah.
very tricky questions.
Yeah,
here.
it's tricky questions. It's more about if the years and kind of measurements are correct.
I like it.
right?
You're
So
sneaky.
I thought I throw your wrench in, but you exposed me, unfortunately. Anyways, I have to opt out my game.
You might have to help it out.
Yep. For my other next topic, the wait what topic, I brought you a little bit discussion of market swings because we saw some crazy days the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, just remember last week sitting in here on our
Yeah.
podcast. It was on a Wednesday.
Right.
Markets were down a lot.
Yeah.
And
We
also-
came down, right, and talked to her like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough at the moment.
you go upstairs and the market finishes up 9% that day. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, in the matter of recording a podcast, everything
Mhm.
changed basically. So let's see what surprises awaits us when we go back upstairs. But generally, we saw some wild swings. Like for example, the day after Liberation Day, Thursday, was one of the days following one of some of the worst days since March 2020, which was COVID, the beginning of COVID. You know, we all thought we're gonna die the next day.
Yeah.
So that was a little. Investors kind of felt the same when it comes to performance here, and then we saw some swings of 5-6% during the day, intraday, which is not normal either.
Yeah.
So which kind of we see how investors are struggling to get more information and more clarity. And as Trump paused, like you said it, while we are recording, the market had one of the best days since 2008,
Yeah.
which was the great financial crisis.
It was a top 10 day, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
it?
So this is insane, and it's just happened in the matter of a week, basically everything. And then we had some craziness in the bond markets and all of that. So there's some crazy things happening. So do you think that the investors' reaction was justified? Keith, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the Liberation Day, the tariff announcement on that day was a lot more aggressive than people expected. So no surprise after the market. We've been telling people, the last 2 years have been great in the market, that expect some kind of more moderation or performance. And then on top of that, you get this tariff announcement that really shocked everybody. The number was 10% across the board. And then certain countries were getting 46%. China was at 54. I think we're up to 145 on China.
Yeah.
I think everybody's like, what? Wait, what? Good
Mhm.
segment that you called it here. Wait, what? So
Mhm.
it's no surprising the market took it. Markets were up like 4% one time this year and
Mhm.
aggressively sold off. So the volatility is picking up. Yeah. Anytime you have any unknowns, volatility picks up.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, a lot of times volatility is on the downside. There can be volatility to the upside, which we saw, last week when we were doing the podcast was up 9%. So doesn't surprise me just because, investors like uncertainty, and this just throws a lot of uncertainty in there. And especially when, even with these announcements, you can't say these are going to be the ones going forward and kind of build your business plan, because I think there's still going to be negotiations. So volatility I think it's going to be around for a while. It's not,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see those. That week we saw last week, after Liberation and the next few days after that, again, the old guy here, I've been doing it a long time. I don't remember a week like that for even during COVID shutdown. You knew things were bad. You didn't know where the bottom was, and the performance may have been down more quickly.
Yeah.
But these intraday swings just on headlines is just crazy. So,
But do you think that's just uncertainty because investors do not know where to go and kind of what to wrap their heads around first? Or is it just the fear of, if everything goes into effect like proposed, what happens to the economy after that? Or is it just some clarity that they seek first? Like, or is it a mix of both? Like, what was the
good.
So going back to the last question, I don't know that the sell-off was necessarily justified, in my opinion, because the way they were selling the stocks, it was more they were pricing for recession and piling into consumer staples. But you think of like Walmart on that day after Liberation Day, Walmart was slightly positive when the S&P was down almost 5%. So, and then Friday, obviously they sold off everything. And I think that was a function of not wanting to go into the market or being invested going into the weekend because you don't know what he's going to do next. And also a function of probably some of these hedge funds and larger investment shops delevering, I think, a little bit too. But I don't know. It's, if you start to pick apart some of these companies that will be most heavily affected by tariffs, it's going to be your Walmart. It's going to be your consumer-based Procter and Gamble,
Your industrials.
It's not. And yes, I know that there's potentially stuff coming on the tech companies with the semi stuff, but I just, the way that they're selling these off is more just like risk off rather than anything.
Yeah. And you just already mentioned it. Investors do not want to be invested maybe over the weekend because nobody knows what's going to happen and what's going to be tweeted, right? Because a tweet basically can change a lot. And we saw that there was like a wrong tweet that got interpreted wrong, that Trump holds off of tariffs, which was a few days before he actually did it. And then the markets went crazy. And then the White House kind of reacted, we never said that. That's not true. Markets sold off again. That was, not even verified news kind of being able to let the market swing in that dramatic. So do you think that generally, like, the fact that one tweet can change so much in just such a short period of time could erode market stability or the trust in financial markets overall?
It shouldn't, but if you keep on getting these different wild movements, everybody just like needs to investors will take a deep breath, say, I need to sit out for a while just to kind of see where things are going. I think that's kind of what we're in. I think we talked about the art of the deal. I think that's
Mhm.
still where we're at. I think that was kind of the worst case scenario that you got announced. China's a little bit different. We talked about last
Mhm.
week. Still agree with that. I think we're starting to see signs that we're going to see individual country agreements. I think that's ultimately the goal. And I
Mhm.
think once you start seeing that, the market's going to say, okay, we see an end, light at the end of the tunnel here.
Mhm.
There'll be some things that maybe some companies like Walmart have to adapt to, or some retailers are
Mhm.
importing things. We get a lot of stuff from Vietnam. Maybe that
Mhm.
changes, or
So
things
you
like
so you think because in China it's a different story. We talked about that, but we still have the pause of 90 days, but
Yep.
we still have 10%
Still have
across the board,
10%,
right?
even though it's 90 days.
So
Yeah.
do you think there's a possibility that even that goes away with or do you think that will stay?
No, I think we'll get a good, at least the bigger companies,
Mhm.
our friendly allies, starting
Mhm.
with. I think United Kingdom was one of them. I've been
Mhm.
hearing Japan are the two
Mhm.
that are kind of supposedly close to deals.
Yeah.
I think once you see those big trading partners actually do some kind of deal, the U.S. gets some kind of concession, whether they're dropping their tariffs, we drop ours.
Or they
Mhm.
commit to buying
I say that, or
some
they,
government purchase or
something from
Yeah.
whatever that we export to them, that they agree to be buying more of it.
Yeah.
I think then also the market like, oh, that's what we're looking for, right?
Relief, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
relief. And we're in earnings season right now, so we're just starting to see what companies are saying. We just seen a few banks.
Mhm.
Generally, the report's been fairly decent.
Mhm.
I would say better than
Yep.
expectations. We're seeing some soft kind of guidance, so
Mhm.
that's going to be the key, I think, the next
Mhm.
couple of weeks.
I don't know that it's as much of art of the deal as it was he had to back off on the tariffs
Mhm.
because, and I don't want to go too deep into because it's not super exciting, but if you start to go into like how the economy works and who buys our debt and how that whole wheel spins in the capital accounts, when you have a deficit, you're sending dollars over to, let's take Japan, for example, right? And then to keep Japan's currency relatively stable, Japan and those companies come over and buy US treasuries, right? That's kind of how that works. And with the amount of debt that we have in Japan, not a lot of people know this, but Japan is the largest holder of US treasuries.
Yeah.
It's like $1.1 trillion.
Mhm.
What percent? Do you know what percentage is that roughly off the
I
top
think
of
it's
our?
3,
What?
around 3%, I think.
Yeah, it's.
Yep.
I think international. I think that's a little bit smaller than what people think. That everybody. China owns our debt. I don't.
No,
China's, I
is
think,
less
second
than
or
that.
third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so when that deficit goes down, they don't need to buy as many treasuries. And what we started to see last week when he backed off was the bond market or the treasury market was starting to lock up a little bit because every day the US government goes out and does auctions,
Yep.
right? Whether it's 6-month notes, I think I think they were looking at doing 6-month T-bills and 10-year treasuries. But no one was coming to buy them. So they were making the dealers like the mutual funds and people that in the secondary market come in and buy them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to get over 25-30% of them being the pure buyers in the
Mhm.
market, that's kind of an issue because you can't keep on that path. So I think that was partly why he had to back off was the bond market was starting to lock up a little bit. And that's also why we saw the US 10-year treasury go from 3.9 to 4.5
That's
in
crazy,
a
yeah.
matter of days.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because they needed to put the demand out
Mm.
or get the demand back by raising the interest rates on.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different
So
parts into play there. Only
that's
thing
my
that
opinion on it. But
no, I agree. That's certainly part of it. I just think the international community, for how much debt that they own in the U.S., is smaller than what people think. I forget the number off the top of my head. It's less than a quarter, I believe. It's like our
Yeah.
Social Security is
Mhm.
like 25%. Our interpayments between the governments is like another 20%. It's like you
But
go down
the-
the path. It's a lot of our
Mhm.
debt, and then you got mutual fund institutions owning another whatever 20. So there's a good chunk that's outside of these
but the
international.
problem is who's that incremental buyer,
Yep.
right? I mean, Japan owns 1.1 trillion, right? If that deficit goes down, maybe they can reduce their holdings by 500 billion at some point. Who's that incremental buyer of that 500 billion?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And as we continue to issue more and more and more debt, because we're still at a deficit in our
yeah,
government,
that's
right?
ultimately the problem is
So
the
Mhm.
deficit, right? If we get that
like that's where
stable,
I'm so confused on how he wants to unwind this because we still have the deficit, so we still need to issue treasuries. Our debt continues to rise. We need the buyers there, but if you're reducing the trade deficits with these countries, you don't have that incremental buyer anymore because they don't need to keep their currency stable relative to the US dollar. So like
the cat bites itself in it.
Yeah, there's no easy answer on this one.
Yeah.
That's why markets are kind of uncertain. So
Yep.
if you look at the last 20 years how the markets are going, everybody kind of understood the game, and this is a game changer. So it's just a matter of how much interruption I think there will be.
Yeah. And you've also seen the US dollar start to decline versus other.
Yeah, I think I just looked this morning.
too.
It's 99, which it hit during election time. It was, just so you guys know, it was like 102, 103.
Which it's not a disaster.
No, not by any
But-
means. And then went up to 102, 103 from November to, I think it got to like 109, and 109 to 99 is a pretty big drop. But again, if you look at just had a spike up, spike down, and again, it's not a disaster, but certainly going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Sounds like doom and gloom.
No, Lisa, what you got anything a little more positive to add on it?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned it a little bit. I mean, we all talk about tariffs and all of that, what's going on, but earnings season started, right? We kind of did not talk about that all that much because that all gets buried in all the other news that grab the headlines. And we started last week with traditionally banks, which you mentioned it was good so far. They beat their earnings. They had a positive note on the consumer, using their debit and credit cards and all of that. So maybe a little bit more focus on the guidance and a little bit more conservative there, but overall better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and retail sales came out this morning were stronger than expectations.
Yeah.
So we don't know if people are pulling forward or not, or if that's just the demand still hanging in there.
Yeah.
I mean, did you look at what the X autos was?
No, I didn't see that. I just
I'd be curious what the X autos. I didn't look at that either, because I would venture a guess that people were loading up just based on the headlines. People were loading up on their cars ahead of the tariffs.
Could be. I mean, that's what you saw a lot of.
My brother-in-law did that. He went out and bought a new truck.
The anecdotal information, that you heard out there. People like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a vehicle before it goes up $5,000.
And so there's a lot of deals at the moment. What I saw when I kind of look at different just for fun.
Besides your plane, you need
no.
new car?
I do not buy anything, but just
you
for fun.
I have 3 cars.
Yeah.
What does she need?
I don't know. For 2 people,
you need 4 cars and a plane.
Is this how they run in Austria? Like more cars than people?
And now I am the bully here, the bullied person here. Interesting. Okay. No, I just was looking because I was interested in prices and all of that. And there's a lot of deals going on at the moment, and a lot of like the banners that you see, special discount or whatever. And I was like, exempt from tariffs, no tariffs included and stuff. I saw a lot of that.
Really on the head?
They kind of tried to drag in the people. Hey, there's no tariffs yet, and buy that and special and whatnot. And so maybe
that did get a few
I know.
people.
I follow this guy on Instagram. He's a Mercedes-Benz GM of a dealership.
Surpriser.
And no, he's super interesting. Just learning about the car, like the inner workings of it. But he was saying that Mercedes-Benz is eating the initial cost of all the tariffs for, I think, for 1 or 2 months while they figure out what exactly they want to do and how to move things around. And
that's a thing that people I don't think completely understand. Every time I do one of these things, talk about tariffs, who pays for them, right? The media says 100% that the consumer is paying for it. That is absolutely not the case. It's a mix between consumer, the importer, and then the manufacturer, the exporter, like you said. And so that's, I mean, ultimately, obviously, the two producing it and selling it want the consumer to pay for it. But at some point in time, there'll be consumer substitution. They won't pay for it. So there's a mix. I think a good chunk is going to the consumer.
And I think it's also different from product to product, right? What you can pass on the consumer, where the consumer is maybe not as price sensitive, you can pass it on better. And other products, they have to eat it up a little bit more. So it's different from product to product.
Well, a good example of this is Walmart. When Trump initially announced the tariffs back in 2017, they basically went to their suppliers,
pushed hard on
them, and they ended up paying for the cost of the tariffs. So they didn't have to raise their prices at all.
Yeah.
Right. So there is some flex there, and a big, massive company like Walmart that does import a lot can have that influence, whereas a small business local in Minnesota who has to get something from overseas probably doesn't have that pull. So it's a little bit different. And to your point, like I was thinking about this on the way in this morning. On Amazon, you go buy a watch band off Amazon for $6 and it comes from China, if it goes up to $12, are you really gonna hold off on that purchase?
No, probably
right?
not.
Like there's certain, to your point, there's
Mhm.
certain products where I think as you get higher up on the pricing scale, like a $200 item that now becomes $450, that's probably a different story. But the cheaper goods that I think a lot of us expect from China probably isn't going to be as affected in
Yep.
what the consumer is going to buy.
True.
Agree.
Yep. So let's move on then. My hot button topic for today, and a little bit another doom and gloom. Let's go back
No,
to doom and gloom.
we'll make this segment a little short.
Ray Dalio, the famous hedge fund manager and founder of Bridgewater, is a known figure in finance world, and his opinion is kind of at least people are very interested in his opinion and pay attention to that. And he sounds a little bit the alarm bell at the moment. He thinks with all the tariff talks that's going on, that's just a symptom of underlying issues, but there's more cooking underneath the hood than what people pay attention to at the moment. And tariffs are just, a symptom of that, but not the underlying issue. And he thinks that generally the power, reserve currency status, geopolitics, and all of that, how the world works together, kind of is reshaping at the moment, and especially the U.S. Role in that will change over time. So I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit, because that all seems a little bit doom and gloom. And he kind of states 5 forces that kind of change all of that, which is economy, internal political conflict, the international order, technology, and acts of nature, which is floods and droughts and all of that. And there's so much boiling at the moment that he thinks, the world order that we know since World War II, basically, with the US, the strongest, is going to change with all of these internal and external factors.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret that I think the global regime is changing at the moment.
Mhm.
We saw it through a number of different elections. Obviously, here in the U.S., you're seeing it overseas in Europe, and you're just hearing about it. Like, take the BRICS countries, for example, right? There's different partnerships happening. There's less globalization happening, right? These companies are becoming more nationalistic in a sense, right? The tariffs are a great point. It is showing that U.S. wants to be more dominant within our borders.
America
right?
first, kind of.
Yeah. And you're seeing that France, you're seeing that Mexico, right? Like there's just different regimes happening. So I don't know that it's really a big secret that we're seeing this type of regime, because ever since World War II, it's been globalization, right? So
with the
we're just
US, the
leading.
strongest part.
and so, yeah, maybe the US isn't the strongest, because as tech shifts, I mean, I think US is still going to be at the top with our technology companies here, but you'll have Taiwan/China, right? India is becoming a major power. I think at some point, a lot of people talk about Africa or Middle East. I think you start to see that happening more as well.
So is the fear a little bit more that not that is happening, but that the US is not used to that? That
I think
it
the
has
US
to,
just isn't used to that.
Yeah, that it
right? We've
has
been
to
number
share
one.
its number one status in the world.
Yeah, and we get a lot of questions about BRICS, right? Like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America or South Africa.
Yep.
And then there's a handful of other smaller countries included in that as well. But you're just seeing the different partnerships, and everybody talks about it like it's a bad thing. European Union was the exact same way, right? All of those countries were separate, and now they're together. And you can make that case, whether it's good or bad. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. But they're just doing the same exact thing, but they're not touching borders, right? So I don't know. That's fine. I think,
Yeah, I think it's a little too much doom and gloom, though. I think, that stuff is shifting. Ultimately, I still think the U.S. is going to be a leader in the world. I mean, maybe not by such a far distance as they have been, but I still think they're going to be their reserve currency. The dollar's sold off a little bit, again, to what we talked about earlier, but it's not much. These other countries, the BRICS, it's like they're each separate countries as well. So when you start to do less globalization, more internal to your own country, those relationships are even more weak. You see, you're in Europe and that it's hasn't been, I don't think, exactly as planned, right? I mean,
Right.
you
There's
can talk
different
about
issues and
different issues
yeah.
there, right? So, but no, I think the U.S. I think this is a lot of just kind of fearfulness, and I think when you take a deep breath and look out 6 months to a year, people are like, oh, that's actually a net benefit for the U.S. Okay, maybe as a whole we're not quite as strong relative to the other, but I think it's going to make the U.S. a lot internally stronger, less dependent on some of these other things that could upset the apple cart. Now, the ultimate thing is U.S. dollar and our amount of debt. That's eventually is going to drive this thing, and if we can't get that figured out, then that could be a bigger issue than I have of what's going on with tariffs. I think if we can bend our debt curve at some point in time, I think people like, oh, that's fantastic. And we can do it. It wasn't that long ago it was in place, so it's not unheard of to have it done. So.
And he also mentioned like the trade disruption, supply chain changes, and the mounting debt as like some key issues to look at. And Keith, you mentioned it, and you're kind of a little bit our dollar specialist here.
Yeah.
And we always hear like the dollar is the king, right? Reserve currency. In international trade, the dollar is just the major currency. And we saw it a little bit now that the dollar was depreciating against major other currencies. Then the news came in again and make maybe a little bit more out of it than it actually is. But we hear a little bit more people now saying, hey, other countries are ditching the dollar, maybe more than before. And now it's really the time where the dollar loses the crown. Like now we are there, and we heard that like every year for the last decades.
Couple decades.
Right. But the argument is now, hey, now it's even more because there's so many policy uncertainties out there that the US is not seen as the safe haven anymore that it was once. So what do you...
Yeah, all these uncertainties everybody's claiming, again, unfortunately revolves around tariffs. That can go away pretty quickly. And it's like, do you really want to change your worldview on what's going on for, say, even a couple of years? I always go back to the fact is like, would you feel a lot better about putting your money in with China as a reserve currency, Brazil?
Yeah.
Europe has fragmented. I mean, so that could be the one that everybody's always worried about, but that really hasn't shown any signs of it, right?
Yeah.
So I still think it's going to be it's going to ebb and flow. If you go back to 2008, this basket we talked about, those numbers I threw out at 103 to 109, we're at 99. Was at 75, 75 is really low, and that's when if we start getting our 99 goes to 75, I guess that would probably be like something's going on if it's sustainable. This part of what's going on with the world economy. I just don't think there's a replacement now. Now, the thing that could be digital, maybe if there's some kind of currency that way that everybody agrees on, ex the US, that maybe, but I don't see it as one other country stepping forward.
And Tal, I want to ask you about this. One of the arguments, and I kind of agree to a certain extent with that, or at least I can see that, is, hey, that can change. Tariffs can change tomorrow, right? And then everything is fine and rosy again. But there is the trust is eroded, sustainable, and with all of that back and forth, that is, when you kind of treat your adversaries and your allies the same way, and kind of do not have a clear communication and all of that the trust is eroded, and you cannot restate that so easily. What do you think to that is maybe some of the issues going forward? You cannot basically go back and say, hey, everything is fine and rosy again. There is some damage to happen.
I mean, it's also a game of politics, right? Like these countries come out and say that, but we're still in trade partnerships, right? We're still buying goods from them.
We consume about 30% of the world's goods. So really, would you want not to do business with someone that consumes that much?
I think it's more them positioning to try to say, hey, we've been a good ally, since World War II. Why are we doing this? Our trust is now eroded, trying to get maybe Trump to back off a little bit for them. I think it's more just political news than anything, and just playing the game. Because they also know that
there's no way around, right?
Everything's going to change. I mean, we've got midterms. This cycle, I'm sure, is going to start picking up here this fall for midterms. And then in theoretically 3 years and 9 months or 8 months, we're going to have a new administration. So
Mhm.
I think it's just more political stance than anything.
And just more right now, and then yeah.
But going back to the Ray Dalio thing, I just want to touch on this because as much as he's doom and gloom and maybe you could call it fear mongering, who knows? We also have to understand that he probably holds something that may benefit if something like this.
I mean, he's a
goes
hedge
down.
fund manager, so
Exactly.
that's
He's
take it
probably
with a grain of
long a
salt.
different. He's
Yep.
probably long a different currency
Mhm.
and short the U.S. dollar. Who knows
knows?
how he's
Mhm.
positioned?
Talking
But you
his
also have
book.
to keep that in mind when
Yeah.
when people like this are putting that kind of stuff out there.
Mhm.
We just have to remember how they might be positioned.
Yep.
And another point is he wrote a book about all of this, so that's another
He
selling point here, right?
I read through his post and he does talk about his book quite a bit.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt. But again, when one of those like big figures in finance say something like that and come out with such a an opinion basically, and such a doom and gloom and something like that no one else actually said before, or people did not look before, then it's at least it gets a lot of attention.
Yep.
And there might be some truth to it, but probably
Yeah.
a little bit more fear mongering than it actually is.
Yeah.
I want to close out on a positive note today with
Oh.
spaghetti wall.
okay.
So I will ask you with different categories what you would go with and what you would choose if you have to choose one thing in that category and stay with it for eternity. So one decision for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Keith, I'll start with you.
Okay. What's the categories?
The first category is cuisine or dish. If you could choose one cuisine or one dish for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Every day, huh? I'm gonna have to do this. It's a tough one. I go pizza just because I can get a variety of pizzas.
That's a diplomatic choice.
I was gonna go pizza too.
Oh, man, that's
I just love pizza.
Yeah,
I
I
could
do
eat
too.
it every night.
Yeah,
Pizza too?
because you can change it.
Yeah. I go with Italian or Thai.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
do a little
which one?
broader.
Yeah, which one? Come on, you said one.
Yeah, if I have
Pick
to
one.
choose, it's Italian. Yeah,
Okay.
I would give the edge to Italian.
That's a big category. That's not
I
right
know.
either. It's like spaghetti. I mean, you
Yeah,
gotta narrow
so-
it down a little bit.
When I have to narrow it down, I would say pasta. I'm a
Okay,
pasta
there you
girl.
go.
I'm a
That's
carb
fine.
girl. Unfortunately, it's not always good, but
There we go.
and pasta, you have all the varieties, so I think I stick with that.
All right.
Next one, drink.
Oh,
Some form of drink or
Tyler go
cocktail or
first.
whatever it is.
Margarita.
Okay, that was
every day.
fast.
That's all you're gonna drink is
Hell
margarita.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with something. Thought about beer, but I don't know if I have beer every day. Let's go Coke.
Mhm.
Me and Warren Buffett just gonna have a Coke
You-
a day.
I go with coffee.
That was my other.
Yeah,
or
I wanted to
water.
choose
I didn't even
Aperol
choose
Spritz,
water.
but I drink that every once in a blue moon because I cannot handle
Yeah, you
alcohol
can't.
that
Lisa,
well.
I've
So
seen you.
I
You can't be drinking that every day.
No, I go with coffee. Next one up, vacation location or country you want to visit. So if it's one place for the rest of your life where you have to do your vacationing, what would it be?
Boy, I'm down to two. I'll throw. It's probably gonna have to be Maui. My second
Maui?
choice would be the Amalfi Coast.
Oh wow, okay,
in
yeah,
Italy.
yeah,
Just in your backyard.
that's pretty different, right? That's yeah.
No, it's
hard.
I don't think I
choose.
can get my wife to, Amalfi Coast for permanent.
I would go with. I'm stuck between two. I've got Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman,
Nice. Very nice.
or I would go Gold Coast, Australia.
Oh,
That's
nice.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one?
I don't-
Which one of the two would you coin flip towards?
I guess I'd go Gold Coast, Australia.
There you go. Gotta get you down to one.
Well, I go with the country, obviously, where my favorite cuisine is in, or my favorite dish for the rest of my life, and that's Italy.
Yeah. Look at you.
Yeah.
You and I
That's
on the
pretty easy for
same
me.
country.
Yeah. Anyways, that was it. So
That was
our
awesome.
audience all know us a little bit better. Now they know what we choose for.
Yeah. We know
For
Tyler
eternity.
likes to drink.
Tyler needs to drink. That's what we
in your
learned
notes,
today.
You had a cocktail glass. I thought we were going with cocktails.
Either way, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's fine.
Well,
That's fine.
There you
Yeah.
go.
So, with that, until next week for episode 52,
Whoop.
we are
Yeah.
back. Take care until then.